Hello, welcome. Ben Hales here with Transform My Poker, and today I have the unenviable task of delivering this video on the subject of how to play in funky stack land. Seriously, Nick, you've got to sort out these titles of these briefs you're giving me. What? Clearly, he believes in a mythical land that doesn't exist. But he has given me the brief that this is between the stack size of 25 to 40 big blinds, which starts to make some sense. And I believe I can say something intelligent on this stack size because it does present some challenges to you, doesn't it? When you've got a stack size that's, you're not deep, but you're not in push fold. You've got above 25 big blinds. You've got some space for some post flop play, but you've not got a deep enough stack to start triple barreling through hands. So you're generally going to have a pre-flop bet and a couple of post flop bets, and that's about it. It's challenging. So what we're going to discuss in this video is what those challenges are and what adjustments we need to make to be successful in this zone of poker. And it's applicable to both tournaments and cash games. So let's have a look. 25 to 40 big blinds. The first thing I want to note is that all your drawing hands lose value. And this should be obvious to you, but I think it needs to be said because I see people making this mistake with their hand choices a lot. You know, 5-6 suited is a great hand when you're playing deep stack, 200 big blinds deep, you're in a cash game. It's a great hand because it can do serious damage. You can make flushes, straights, straight flushes. You're going to take out, occasionally, you're going to take out someone for his entire stack. You're going to win a fortune. You can't do that at 25 to 40 big blinds. The risk of getting involved is too much for the relative reward. You're not going to get the huge rewards, and it's not going to happen very often. You know that you're not going to make straights and flushes often enough to justify getting involved with these marginal types of hands. That's not to say that you can't use some suited aces, suited connectors in your ranges to add some balance, but you should be weighted heavily towards value hands, ace king, ace queen, high cards, much more valuable in funky stack land. So that's point number one. It's an important one. And so when you're choosing your starting hand ranges, your pre-flop selections are going to be crucial to how you're going to perform. Your post-flop play is going to be less important because there's just not going to be as much of it. And therefore, getting your pre-flop starting hand ranges correct is where most of the battle is going to be won and lost. Okay? The second point is it's on the same kind of theme that drawing hands lose value, and small pocket pairs like 2s through to 6s are particularly challenging to play with a small stack. You go raising with them, they can be tricky to play. I mean, often a small min raise is going to be a good way of playing the hand. Limping, always a bit less attractive. You've not got enough stack depth to really just go in set mining. You need to be the aggressor, and you need to try and win the pot through non-showdown. It's very difficult to navigate this type of stack size with a small pocket pair. Much easier with a deeper stack, and much easier with a push fold strategy where you just launch them in pre-flop and avoid all the problems that inevitably come about trying to play these hands that don't flop well. So the third point, I just want to reiterate the fact that there's not going to be as much post-flop play. Plan the hand from the beginning. Choose high cards. Don't choose inappropriate hands that are speculative. You want to be planning for hands that have got showdown value, as the lower the stack size that you have, the more showdown value heavy it needs to be. You've got less chance that the hand's going to be folded out. There's much more chance that the showdown is going to take place. The deeper you are, the much less likely it is that there will be a showdown. But the shallower you are, the much more likely a showdown's going to take place. All right, pretty obvious, but 25 to 40, we're going to see quite a few showdowns, so tend to start with hands that are going to do well. An ace or a king's a good start. Typically, stack to pot ratios, if you remember this phrase SPR, very important when we're thinking about this post-flop action, 25 to 40 bigs. You're going to have a small stack to pot ratio. There may be 500 in the middle, there's only 1,000 left. That's an SPR of 2, and that's a really small number. If you flopped middle pair or something, that might well be good enough to end up all in. Certainly top pair is going to be good enough. So you're going to find commitment levels post flop are much higher with small SPRs. And if you start off with 25 to 40 bigs, you're going to have small SPRs. So you need to be planning for, committing to quite a few more hands than you would normally. And again, that takes us back to our starting hands. Well, don't want to be getting involved with too much rubbish. So there we go. Final point I want to make is to try and avoid some of the problems that can develop with small stack to pot ratios and not having as much post-flop play. One thing that you can do is to broaden your 4-bet range and to recognize the fact that, if somebody's 3-bet you, maybe they're just trying to make you fold. Maybe their 3-bet range is a bit wide, especially a loose aggressive player who is good and is going to be capable of folding a lot of strong hands, like maybe pocket tens, he's going to put down. Then you may want to broaden your 4-bet range. You can include suited aces in there, and then your value hands. And I'm not talking about a massive change in your 4-bet range, but just maybe including a couple of extra hands in there than you would normally, especially when you're sat out of position on the 3-better and you decide, okay, well, I kind of can't really call here. So you're going to have to fold or 4-bet. Maybe choose 4-bet a little bit more often. This can be quite a good zone for 4-betting with a pre-flop shove. It's dangerous and scary. Yes, it is. But that's poker. At times you've got to make a tough decision, and funky stackland calls for funky decisions. So let's rattle off a few of these adjustments that we can make in funky stackland. I've just started talking about widening your 4-bet range. This would be one of the potential adjustments you might want to make. You definitely want to be targeting weak players who fold too often, both pre-flop and post-flop. And you might argue this doesn't just apply to funky stackland, but I think it in particular it does. You need to be a bit more risky. So stealing becomes a really important factor for you. You need to steal appropriately. This is a difficult skill. But spotting anybody who's folding too often, get on their case, get raising, make them fold, both pre-flop and post-flop. I've talked about widening your 4-bet range, but obviously also widen your 3-bet range. In the right spots, if you think somebody's stealing too often, re-steal or 3-bet from the button and put some pressure on someone who's out of position. Be prepared to make a few moves, and you may be putting your tournament life in jeopardy. You may be jeopardizing your entire stack, and that's never something to do lightly, but this is the type of stack size where you can afford to take a few more risks. So the final point I want to make is that just in general, when you're down in the dumps, you've got a smaller stack size, generally speaking, it becomes even more important to be the aggressor. Don't start calling 3-bets. Don't do that. That's not going to help you much in funky stack land. Not unless you've got a really good, clear game plan of action. Tend to choose the aggressive action. If you've been raised, raise or fold, 3-bet or fold. If you've been 3-bet, 4-bet or fold. This becomes really, really important in funky stack land. I can't believe I'm saying that. Finally, remember not to do too much folding. And if you are somebody who you think maybe does fold a little bit too often, funky stack land is not a zone where you want to be folding too much. Be decisive pre-flop. By all means fold if it's not going to cost you anything. But as soon as you've started investing chips in the pot, think about how much of a percentage of those chips of your stack are in the middle. You only want to be folding when you're in bad shape. Yeah, don't fold too often. Sometimes you may have to take a bit of a gamble on, be aggressive. So try not to do too much folding, especially post-flop, but also pre-flop. If you make those 5 adjustments to your play in funky stack land, you're going to make some improvements. Thanks very much for listening. My name's Ben Hales with Transform My Poker. Do your stuff with the likes, lots of likes, please. And yeah, comments and questions, complaints about the titles of the video, all very welcome.